Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So in today's video I am going to be talking about my pregnant at 16 experience. So yeah, well, let's get in. So I first found out I was pregnant in January of 2018. It was scary. I didn't know exactly what to think or what to do. I mean, I had kind of suspected that I was pregnant because I had been getting sick a lot. But I was dating this guy. I thought that I really liked him. That's how it always is. And, you know, I could see myself being with him for a long time. And one thing led to another, and we just hit it off, I guess. I mean, there's really nothing more to say to that. We started talking a lot, and then we started seeing each other because he was my best friend's cousin. So there was a lot of opportunity there for me and him both to see each other. And, you know, we kind of just talked for a while. We knew each other for a few years, actually, but we never really, like, connected, I guess. There was nothing there. And the more I hung out with my friends, which started to become every weekend, the more we would see each other. So when I found out I was pregnant, I was scared to tell my mom. I didn't know what she would say, I didn't know what she would do, but my mom was young too, and she had my older brother and she had me, so I knew that she would be understanding. I was just scared to tell her because I was pregnant and I'm a teenager. So I kept getting sick at school, and then one day I was just like, Mom, you have to come get me, I'm getting sick, I can't stay here. So she came and got me, and she worked at the elementary school, the school that I went to. And I talked to the nurse, and I told her I've taken pregnancy tests, and every single one of them have come out to be positive. And she said, okay, we need to talk to your mom. She took my temperature, I was running a fever, so she started freaking out. That's the only reason she told me to tell her right then and there, because I was running a fever. And I went and told my mom, and I didn't even tell her. I walked up to her and I was like, Mom, we need to talk. And the nurse was standing in there in her room, and then she's like, I'm just gonna go step outside for a minute, and she shuts the door, and my mom looks at me and she's like, you're pregnant. And I was like, yeah. And I started bawling, like just tears just running down my face. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what to do. I was stuck right there. In that moment. And she walked up to me and she was like, I knew it. And she kind of like hugged me, and then she started crying, and then she was mad at me, and then she was mad at me, and then she was happy, and I don't know, there was just emotions everywhere. So directly after that, she had called the clinic, our local clinic, and she told them I need to walk in. I need to schedule a walk-in to get my daughter tested. And they said, for what? And she said, a pregnancy test. And I knew it. I already knew it. I knew there was no doubt in my mind that I wasn't pregnant, because I know my body, and my body was telling me, hey, something's up. And we went in there. The lady was so nice. She was actually like 24 weeks pregnant, I think. She gave me my pregnancy test, and she came back into the room and she said, well, I have news for you. You're pregnant. And my mom just looked at me and she was like, okay. And she was like, what do we do now? She was asking the lady, because, I mean, it's been almost 11 years since she's had a kid, and things have changed. But, the lady told us, she gave us some hospitals to go to, some places to call. She gave me some vitamins to take. She told me what to do. and we kind of just rode home in silence. Didn't really say anything. My heart was beating out of my chest because I knew I was gonna have to come home and tell my stepdad. And we got almost home, like we were on our road, like 30 seconds from our house. My mom's like, "You're gonna tell him, not me." And I started crying even more. Like, I didn't know what to do because I didn't want to disappoint him. So we walk in there, and my mom's like, "I have something to tell you. It's really important, and I don't want you to freak out." And he was just guessing. I mean, at first he was like, kind of like, whatever. He was like, "Did you wreck the car?" And then he would laugh that off, and he's like, he's like, "Somebody's pregnant." And my mom was like, "Yeah." And then he looks at her, and he's like, "Are you pregnant?" And she was like, "No." And then he looked at me, and I started crying. And because I had gotten in trouble with them, like, with the same guy, no, yeah, maybe half a year before that. And, you know, I got my phone taken away the whole entire summer. I didn't have my phone at all. The only phone I could use was my brother's. If we were gone, I wasn't allowed to, like, go hang out at my friend's house, you know. I had to stay strictly with them. And so, I mean, that was fine and all. And then I guess I just kind of, like, I don't know what I did, but my dad just looks at me and he's like, "We trusted you and you let us down." And that just kept repeating over and over and over in my head, and I was just crying. I went to my room and I was bawling, and my mom walks in there about an hour later, and she's like, "You know, it's okay." She was like, "We can get through this together. I've been through this 5 times. You know, you'll be fine." And that's when I knew, like, my mom was okay with it. She was still, like, she was hurt because I didn't tell her before, and I had known that I was pregnant. But I was just scared. I didn't know what to do. And so we waited, and then March was when we went to go see the baby. We went to have my first visit, and everything looked good. And then when my mom heard his heartbeat, that's when she got excited. Like, she started getting excited, and I was sick every single day of my pregnancy. There was not one day that I did not get sick, whether it was in the morning, during the day, or at night. And I worked all day on the weekends. I worked double shifts on the weekends, and then almost every day after school. So it was hard on me. I would get sick at work. I would go out into the back, and I would just get sick and sick and sick, and I didn't know what to do. And I almost didn't want to go through with it. I was crying, and I felt so bad for thinking that, and I feel way worse now that I have my son here. But it was like, I just got so sick, and I thought that something was going to be wrong with him. I thought that something was wrong with me. They thought that we were going to have to bring him, like, induce me to have him born earlier because of how sick I was getting, and I was getting lightheaded all the time, and I was wanting to pass out, and I had really bad headaches, and it was just my blood cells were too low. I had anemia. And I had to start getting on iron supplements, and I had to start taking all these different kind of vitamins, more than just my prenatal vitamins. And you know, I went to high school, and I made a lot more friends. But then I realized after I left, because when school had let out, I was 5 months pregnant, and I just started showing. I was small. I didn't get big at all during my whole entire pregnancy. I was really tiny. And I was 5 months pregnant, and then once summer came around, I never really saw my friends. I never went out. It was too hot for me. I didn't see anyone, really. I worked most of the summer, and then August came, and August. It was either right before August or right as August hit. my boss started making fun of me for being pregnant, and my hormones were way whack because I was like 7 months pregnant, and I quit my job. So I told my mom, I was like, I'm just gonna have to be here. I can't work. You know, I'm getting too big. My feet are starting to hurt. I can't do this. My back is hurting. And I quit my job. And then he asked for me back. And I told him, if you're gonna keep making fun of me, then no, I'm not coming back. And that was that. I never really heard from him again. You know, that was one of the my favorite places that I had ever worked. The people treated me nice there, and then we got a new manager, and that was a whole different story. And I know that after I left, a bunch of my friends left too, because he just got too much, he was too much to handle. He was nice at times, but I couldn't deal with him. My friends couldn't deal with him.
Does he need to eat?
Maybe some baby food.
Do you know where it is?
In the fridge.
Okay.
It just got to be too much for me to handle, and so I told my parents. My dad wasn't mad at me for quitting. He was just like, why didn't you put in your notice? You could have stayed there 2 more weeks. This is going to be on your record, you know. But I wasn't really worried about it, because at the end, they got in trouble for a lot of things. So I don't think it'll affect me. I know it'll affect me, but I have a reasoning for it. And so I kind of just realized, I don't know. I know a lot of, people who, women who get pregnant and have kids, especially young like me, they realize who their friends are, who's there for them and who's not. And my son's cousins are there. They texted me, you know, we were talking. They weren't there for his birth because I had complications. We both almost didn't make it. And that was really traumatizing. I didn't have my phone. I couldn't, message them or anything. My mom wasn't really there. She had to go get my sisters, because I went into labor at 8 o'clock in the morning, and by this time I had already turned 17. I was 17. I turned 17 in September. My son was born in October. And I didn't really feel anything. I kind of woke up, because between me quitting my job and then October, nothing had really happened. I was just home. I didn't go to school after that. I didn't go to school that next year. I did go to online school, but I didn't go to physically go to school. And October came, and my mom was working nights at a hospital. She was a telemetry technician, so she monitored people who had heart problems and stuff, or I don't know, just find one. Child. But she monitored people, she watched them, she made sure they were okay, and sometimes they weren't. She would come home and she would be like, today was a hard day, you know, I can't do this. I've watched people pass away, I've watched families cry, and then sometimes she was like, it was a great day, nobody passed away. You know, you never really, in that setting, you never know. And so she had gotten home that night. The day before that, she worked a day shift. She was on day, and then sometimes she was on night, so she was doing both. And she got home, she was sleeping all night, and then I wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, something feels weird. Because the night before I was having contractions, but they were 10 or 15 minutes apart. You know, I didn't think anything of it. I took a warm bath because I was hurting, and I heard that helps cramp, the contractions. And I remember after I took my bath, I got out and I had a resistance band, and I was doing squats with resistance bands, because near the end I started walking every day down my road with my brother. I was just ready to have this baby. He was hurting me, and it felt better to walk. Like, after I walked, I felt physically better. And you know, I told my brother, I was like, I'm just ready to have this baby. He was like, it'd be funny if you went into labor tomorrow. I went into labor that morning. Like, I woke up, it was actually like 7:30-ish. I told my mom, I said, something is up, I'm leaking fluids. And she was like, are you sure? What does it look like? And I'm like, Mom, it looks like water. I'm not peeing myself. It looks like water. Like, I can't control this. And she was like, okay, well, are you sure? And I was like, Mom, yes. I was like standing there with the towel wrapped around me because I was leaking water. And she gets up, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go get Gabe up. So I went and got my brother. You hush. I went and got my brother up, and I was like, hey, I think I'm going into labor. I think my water just broke. We're gonna go to the hospital. And he was like, Haley, if this is a false alarm, I swear I'm gonna be mad at you, because he wanted to sleep in. Because he was getting homeschooled with me, because he had injured his back. And so I was like, I don't think this is a false alarm. I don't feel any contractions, but my water broke. I'm not, this isn't happening for no reason. And we kept trying to call my doctor's office, but it was so early, nobody was in the clinic part. And then we tried calling the emergency room, and she was like, I can't tell you what to do. And it was a women's hospital for birthing, which I guess makes sense, because my mom said that they really can't tell you what to do. But I was still like, I'm going into labor, for heaven's sakes, This is my first time, this is my first child, I don't know what to do. And so I started freaking out, and then we got into the car, I got all my things ready. I had my bags packed for weeks before that, because I knew, like, I started seeing him drop. And then my last appointment, 2 weeks before that, she felt me, and she was like, I can feel his head. We're gonna be seeing you really soon, if it's not in the next, like, 2 weeks. I was supposed to go the day after I went into labor. I went to labor on a Tuesday, and I was supposed to go there on a Wednesday. And so we went in, and then they finally called back when we were halfway there, and she said, just go ahead and come on in. What did your doctor tell you before you left last time? And I told her, and she was like, I'm pretty sure you're in labor, you need to come in. And so we were halfway there, and then my contractions started every 4 minutes, and they started getting more intense. And I never knew, like, I watched so many videos to try to prepare myself for this, because I wasn't scared, but I didn't know what to expect. And it's true, you're having contractions when you can't talk. Like, I was sitting there, and my mom and brother would be talking to me, and then I would just, like, clench up, and my body would start shaking, and I couldn't say anything. And I was like, I would press the timer when I would feel it, like, start to happen. And then it would go, and then it would reset after I click it again, so it would time my contractions, because my doctor said that they want to see that when I go in. And she checked me when I went in there. We had to sign in and everything. I was like wobbling like a penguin, and she checked me, and she was like, I don't see any fluids. And then my mom was like, well, because I was wearing a pad, because I was leaking so much, she was like, can you swab this? And she swabbed it, and she was like, that's water. And so, they put my IV in. They were trying to wait to get me checked in. They let my doctor know. She came down there. She was talking to me. She was coaching me through it. And so then she went back upstairs to go see some of her other patients. And they put an IV in my hand. I don't remember. I think it was this one, my left one. And as soon as she stuck the needle in, I wasn't nervous when I got in there. I was ready. I was excited to see what it was going to be like, because 9 months, almost 9 months. I went into labor 38 weeks. Like, no, it was actually like 37 weeks, and I don't know, but it was right, it was almost 38 weeks. And I was excited, I was ready, and she told me, breathe in through your nose when I stick this needle in. And it was just for, I think it was just for saline. I'm not sure, I don't remember, but she stuck it in, and when I breathed, like, I was breathing in really slow, my heartbeat, like, dropped to, like, in the 40s. And then they had the heart monitor on the baby on my stomach, and his heart stopped beating. And they couldn't find him, and everything started going black. I couldn't talk. Like, the last thing I remember telling her was, is it normal to start feeling really hot? I think this was by the time the needle had already been in, and I felt the fluid. She said, you'll feel it cold through your veins. And I said, I feel hot. And then she said that my face just started sweating. Like, I got sweat all over me. And I was in a gown. I was undressed and everything. And then I remember my mom was out of the room. She was talking to my grandma. And, no, she was calling the school. And I remember, my mom wasn't in there, and I wanted her in there because I was freaking out. And my older brother was a stillborn, my mom's first son, and I didn't want that to happen to my baby because I just didn't want to go through that. And his heart stopped beating, and his heart stopped beating. And so I remember a bunch of doctors running in there, and they made me flip over. And first I was on my side, and they were like, we can't find the heartbeat. And I don't even, like, everything was black around me. All I could hear was people talking. I couldn't see anything. I felt something go over my face, and then this, like, rush of air in my face. And they said, she can't breathe, she's not breathing, she's not getting oxygen. And then they made me get over, like, on all fours, and I had doctors, like, all around me in this tiny little emergency room. And they kept, like, petting my head. I had some of them petting my head and some of them rubbing my back, and they were like, you just need to relax, you need to start breathing. And I didn't know what was going on. She was like, it's nothing, don't worry about it, he'll be fine. And then I heard someone say, get the doctor down here, we're gonna have to get her into the surgery table. And so I started freaking out even more. I'm like, I didn't come in here to have surgery, I just wanted to have him. And then my mom walks in there, and she starts freaking out, and she starts, like, crying, and that made me cry. And then I started hearing another heartbeat, and then they said, we found him, but he's in the 30s, you need to calm down, you need to start breathing once we get him up into the 70s. And then you know, because their heartbeat slows down once I start going into labor. She said, then we'll try to work on the 120s, but you need to start breathing. You need to calm down, you need to stop freaking out and get more oxygen. And so they stuck the heart monitor back on my stomach, they put it back on there, and they made me lay down on my side. They wouldn't let me get on my back. And she, like, had the table, like, upside down, so I guess the blood would start rushing to my head again because I could not see anything. And I was in there for a while. They wouldn't let me take the oxygen mask off. And then my brother walks in there because my mom had to go to get my sisters. After the doctor told her everything was fine, we were going to be fine, she went to go get my sisters. And my brother was sitting in there, and he was like, you look really bad. I was like, I feel really bad. I'm just ready to have him. And I was still freaked out. You know, I didn't want to cry, but I didn't want to not cry. I didn't know what to do. But I was just trying to stay, like, calm. And we eventually got moved into the birthing room, and they were so nice to me. I still had the oxygen mask on for like 2 hours, and then they started getting me hooked up, you know, my heartbeat and everything. They got me hooked up to all the machines, the contraction machine in the other room, because I was in the emergency room hooked up to one. And you know, then my contractions started getting really bad, and by this time it was already 12, maybe 1, My mom almost didn't make it for my birth, and my stepdad almost didn't make it either, because he worked a few hours, like, away from where I was having my birth. Like, not a few hours. He worked, like, maybe 30 minutes. That was way too dramatic. Like, 30 minutes away from where I was having my birth. And, he got off early at 3 to come to the hospital, because normally he would get off at, like, almost 4. And, you know, I didn't want to have an epidural at all, because my mom had one epidural, I think, and she said that it hurt her back really bad, and I didn't want to go through that. But it got to the point where I was hurting so bad that when I had my contractions, my whole body was like shaking, and the anesthesiologist came in, because my mom's had